Maya Johnson pushed through the glass doors of the Terran Space Communications Institute for what she did not know would be the last time. Her badge beeped as she walked past security, and the familiar sound made her smile. 12 years she had been walking through these doors. 12 years of working on the most important project in human history. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floor of the lobby. Maya carried her coffee in one hand and a thick folder of research papers in the other. She had been up all night again, working on the communication protocols for first contact. The alien ship was coming, and humanity had to get this right. Maya took the elevator to the 7th floor where the main communication lab was located. The doors opened with a soft ding, and she stepped into the hallway lined with photos of famous scientists and space missions. Her own photo was there too, from when she had won the Outstanding Research Award 3 years ago. She paused to look at it for a moment, remembering how proud she had felt that day. The lab was already buzzing with activity when Maya arrived. Her colleagues were hunched over computer screens, analyzing data streams and testing signal patterns. Maya set her coffee down at her workstation and opened her folder. Inside were detailed notes about something that had been keeping her awake for weeks. The communication protocols that Director Alan Curtis wanted to use were all wrong. Maya had discovered this while studying the preliminary signals they had received from the approaching alien vessel. The signals showed patterns that suggested the aliens communicated very differently from humans. They seemed to value emotional intensity and volume in their communications, not the quiet, measured tones that Curtis insisted on using. Maya had tried to bring this up in meetings before, but Curtis always dismissed her concerns. He would smile politely and say they needed to stick to established procedures, but Maya knew that established procedures were not going to work with these aliens. She had the data to prove it. Dr. Patricia Wells walked over to Maya's desk. Patricia was one of the few people in the institute who actually listened to Maya's ideas. She was younger than Maya but brilliant in her own right, specializing in signal analysis. "You look tired," Patricia said, sitting down in the chair next to Maya's desk. "I was up all night working on the alien communication patterns," Maya replied, pulling out a sheet of graphs and charts. "Patricia, look at this. The signal variations they're sending us are not random. They follow emotional patterns. When they send strong signals, they're trying to show us they're being honest and open. When we respond with our quiet, careful signals, they probably think we're being deceptive or sick." Patricia studied the charts, her eyes growing wide. "This is incredible work, Maya. Have you shown this to Curtis yet?" Maya shook her head. "I tried to bring it up in the staff meeting last week, but he cut me off. He said I was being too loud and disruptive. He told me to focus on my assigned tasks and leave the big picture planning to the senior staff. But this could change everything," Patricia said. "If you're right about this, then everything we're planning to say to the aliens could be interpreted as an insult or a threat." Maya nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I'm afraid of, and I've been trying to tell them this for months, but nobody wants to listen to the loud black woman who doesn't know her place." The bitter words hung in the air between them. Maya had not meant to say that last part out loud, but it was true. She had felt it in every meeting. Every time Curtis or his deputy Lisa Hart looked at her with barely concealed annoyance when she spoke up. Every time they praised her for her enthusiasm while ignoring her actual research. "You have to try again," Patricia said firmly. "This is too important. Humanity's first contact with an alien species could determine our entire future relationship with them." Maya looked at her research one more time. The data was clear. The aliens were trying to communicate with emotional honesty, and humans were responding with what probably seemed like cold, calculated deception. If this continued, first contact could be a disaster. "You're right," Maya said, gathering up her papers. "I'm going to Curtis's office right now." Maya walked down the hallway to the executive wing, her heart pounding. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say a dozen times, but she knew Curtis would not make it easy. He never did when Maya brought him ideas that challenged his established plans. She knocked on Curtis's office door and heard his voice call out for her to enter. Curtis was sitting behind his large oak desk, with Lisa Hart in one of the chairs, across from him. They were reviewing what looked like the final draft of the first contact protocols. "Maya," Curtis said without looking up from his papers. "What can I do for you?" "Director Curtis, I need to talk to you about the communication protocols we're planning to use with the aliens," Maya said, holding up her folder of research. Curtis finally looked up, and Maya could see the irritation in his eyes. "Maya, we've been over this before. The protocols have been approved by the review board. We're not going to change our entire approach based on speculation." "It's not speculation," Maya said, her voice rising slightly. "I have hard data that shows the aliens communicate using emotional intensity as a sign of honesty and respect. If we use our current protocols, they're going to think we're lying to them or that we're sick." Lisa Hart leaned forward in her chair. "Maya, you need to understand that first contact is too important to risk on untested theories. We have to use communication methods that we know work." "But they don't work," Maya said, her voice getting louder. "The data clearly shows that our quiet, measured approach is being misinterpreted by the aliens. We're setting ourselves up for a catastrophic misunderstanding." Curtis stood up from his desk, his face flushing red. "Maya, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. This kind of emotional outburst is exactly why we can't trust you with critical decisions." Maya felt her anger flare. "Emotional outburst? I'm trying to save humanity from making the biggest mistake in our history, and you're worried about the volume of my voice?" "That's enough," Curtis said coldly. "Maya, your inability to work within established parameters has become a serious problem. You're too loud, too argumentative, and too disruptive to the team dynamic." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "You're firing me because I'm too loud? We're terminating your employment because you refuse to follow proper procedures and because your behavior is unprofessional," Lisa Hart said, standing up next to Curtis. "Security will escort you out of the building. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings." Maya felt the world spinning around her. 12 years of work, 12 years of dedication to this project, and they were throwing her out because she cared too much to stay quiet when humanity's future was at stake. "You're making a mistake," Maya said, her voice shaking with emotion. "When first contact fails, when the aliens turn hostile because they think we're deceiving them, remember this moment. Remember that you had someone who could have prevented it, and you fired her for being too loud." Curtis pressed a button on his desk, and 2 security guards appeared at the door. "Please escort Ms. Johnson to her desk so she can collect her things, then see her out of the building," he said. Maya walked out of the office between the 2 guards, her head held high despite the tears in her eyes. As they passed through the lab, she saw Patricia watching with horror from her desk. Maya gave her a small nod, hoping Patricia would understand what it meant. An hour later, Maya stood on the sidewalk outside the Terran Space Communications Institute, holding a cardboard box of her personal belongings. Inside were 12 years of research, including the data that could save humanity from disaster. She looked up at the building one last time, then turned and walked toward her car. They had silenced her voice inside those walls, but Maya Johnson was not done speaking. Not by a long shot. 6 months had passed since Maya Johnson walked out of the Terran Space Communications Institute with her career in ruins. She sat in her small apartment, surrounded by stacks of papers and computer equipment she had bought with her savings. The television droned in the background, showing news reports about the approaching alien fleet. Maya had not given up on her research. If anything, being fired had freed her to dig deeper into the alien communication patterns without interference from Curtis and his bureaucratic rules. Every day she monitored the signals coming from the alien ships as they moved closer to Earth. Every day, her understanding of their communication style grew stronger. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrians, though that was just the closest human translation of their actual name. Maya had discovered that they were crystalline beings, formed from living mineral structures that had evolved on a planet where communication happened through harmonic vibrations. Their entire culture was built around the idea that honest communication required emotional intensity and volume. To speak quietly to a Zephyrian was like whispering to a human during a funeral. It meant you were either sick, sad, or lying. Maya turned up the volume on her television as the news anchor began talking about the latest developments with the alien fleet. The Zephyrian vessels have now entered the outer edge of our solar system, the anchor said, her voice tense with barely controlled fear. Government officials continue to assure the public that first contact protocols are proceeding according to plan, but sources inside the Terran Space Communications Institute report that initial communication attempts have not been successful. Maya snorted. Not successful was putting it mildly. She had been monitoring the official communications between Earth and the Zephyrian fleet, and it was a disaster. Curtis and Lisa Hart were using exactly the protocols Maya had warned them about. Quiet, careful, measured tones that the Zephyrians were interpreting as signs of deception or illness. The Zephyrian responses were getting more agitated with each exchange. Maya could read the emotional patterns in their signals, and what she saw terrified her. The aliens were not just confused by Earth's communication style. They were becoming angry and suspicious. They thought humanity was trying to trick them or that humans were a dying species too weak to communicate properly. Maya's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. She looked at the caller ID and saw Patricia Wells' name. Maya had not spoken to her former colleague since the day she was fired, though Patricia had tried to call several times. "Hello, Patricia," Maya said, answering the phone. "Maya, thank God you picked up." Patricia's voice was strained with worry. "I need to talk to you. Can I come over?" "I don't think that's a good idea," Maya replied. "Curtis probably has you watched. He would not want you talking to the woman who was too loud for his precious institute." "Maya, please," Patricia said, and Maya could hear desperation in her voice. "The situation here is falling apart. The Zephyrians are not responding well to our communications, and nobody knows what to do. Curtis is in panic mode, and Hart is blaming everyone except themselves for the problems." Maya felt a cold chill run down her spine. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Patricia whispered. "The Zephyrian fleet moved into what our military analysts are calling a defensive formation yesterday. Their communication signals have changed too. The linguistics team thinks they might be preparing for some kind of conflict." Maya closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead. This was exactly what she had feared would happen. "Patricia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The Zephyrians are not preparing for conflict because they want to hurt us. They're moving into defensive positions because they think we're planning to attack them." "What do you mean?" "Our quiet, careful communication style is being interpreted as the behavior of a species that is either dying or trying to deceive them," Maya explained. "In Zephyrian culture, honest beings communicate with emotional intensity and volume. When we speak to them in our measured, diplomatic tones, they think we're either too sick to communicate properly or we're trying to hide our true intentions." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Maya, if you're right about this, then we're about to cause an interstellar war through a simple misunderstanding." "I know," Maya said grimly. "And there's more. I've been analyzing their recent signals, and I think they're trying to give us one last chance to communicate honestly with them. But if we keep using Curtis's protocols, they're going to assume we're hostile and act accordingly. You have to come back," Patricia said urgently. "You have to talk to Curtis and Hart. Make them understand what's happening." Maya laughed bitterly. "Patricia, they fired me for being too loud. Do you really think they're going to listen to me now when I tell them that being loud is exactly what we need to do?" "Then what do we do?" Patricia asked. "Just sit here and watch humanity stumble into a war with an alien species because our leaders are too proud to admit they made a mistake?" Maya stared out her apartment window at the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Zephyrian fleet was waiting for humanity to prove that it could communicate like an honest species. The answer to preventing disaster was sitting right here in her apartment, in all the research she had done over the past 6 months. "I need you to do something for me," Maya said finally. "I need you to get me access to the communication array." "Maya, that's impossible. Security has been doubled since the aliens arrived. Even if I could get you inside the building, Curtis would have you arrested." "I'm not talking about getting inside the building," Maya said, her mind racing with possibilities. "The Institute uses a backup communication station at the university for redundancy, right? The one they set up in case the main array gets damaged?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. Yes, but that's just for emergencies. It's not normally staffed. But it has full communication capability with the Zephyrian fleet? In theory, yes, but Maya, you can't be serious. If you use unauthorized equipment to contact the aliens, Curtis will have you charged with treason. Maya thought about the Zephyrian signals she had been monitoring. The aliens were running out of patience with humanity's strange communication style. Soon they would decide that Earth was either a dying world or a hostile one. Either way, the result would be the same. The Zephyrians would leave, and humanity would lose its first and possibly only chance to join the galactic community. Patricia, I need you to help me get access to that backup station, Maya said. I know it sounds crazy, but I think I can fix this. I think I can communicate with the Zephyrians in a way they'll understand. How? Maya smiled grimly. By being too loud. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Maya could almost hear her thinking through the implications of what Maya was suggesting. Finally, Patricia spoke. If we do this and it goes wrong, we'll both be in prison for the rest of our lives. If we don't do this and the Zephyrians leave or attack, there might not be a rest of our lives to worry about, Maya replied. When do you want to do this? Maya looked at her computer screen, where the latest Zephyrian signals were displayed, in complex wave patterns. The aliens were still trying to communicate, but their patience was wearing thin. Soon they would give up on humanity entirely. Tonight, Maya said. We do this tonight. After Maya hung up the phone, she sat in her apartment looking at 6 months of research spread across her desk. Charts showing Zephyrian communication patterns, analysis of their emotional responses, and detailed plans for how to communicate, with them using the kind of passionate, intense style that Curtis had fired her for using. Maya had spent her entire career studying how to talk to aliens, and now she finally had the chance to put her theories to the test. The irony was not lost on her that the very traits that had gotten her fired might be the key to saving humanity. She began gathering her research papers, preparing for what might be the most important conversation in human history. In a few hours, Maya Johnson was going to be loud again. This time, the fate of 2 species might depend on it. The university campus was dark and quiet at 2 in the morning. Maya Johnson crouched behind a row of bushes near the communications building, watching for security guards. Her heart pounded as she clutched a backpack full of research papers and portable equipment. Next to her, Patricia Wells checked her watch nervously. The guard makes his rounds every hour, Patricia whispered. We have about 40 minutes before he comes back this way. Maya nodded and followed Patricia across the open courtyard to the side entrance of the building. Patricia swiped her university access card and the door clicked open. They slipped inside quickly, their footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The backup communication station was located in the basement of the building. It was a smaller version of the main array at the institute, designed to take over if the primary systems ever failed. Patricia led Maya down a narrow staircase and through a series of locked doors until they reached a room filled with computer screens and communication equipment. This is it, Patricia said, turning on the lights. The system is already configured to connect with the Zephyrian fleet. All we have to do is activate it. Maya set down her backpack and pulled out her research papers. For 6 months, she had been preparing for this moment. She had studied every signal the Zephyrians had sent, analyzed every pattern in their communication style, and developed what she believed was the correct approach for talking to them. Are you sure about this? Patricia asked as she began powering up the communication array. If Curtis finds out we did this, he'll destroy both our careers. Maya looked at the screens showing the position of the Zephyrian fleet. The alien ships had moved even closer to Earth since yesterday, but they were still maintaining their defensive formation. Time was running out. Patricia, our careers don't matter if humanity loses its chance to join the galactic community, Maya said. Or worse if we end up in a war because nobody would listen to the woman who was too loud. As Patricia worked to establish a connection with the Zephyrian fleet, Maya spread her research across a table and began reviewing her notes one final time. The key to communicating with the Zephyrians was understanding that they were crystalline, beings who had evolved on a planet where sound and vibration carried emotional meaning. Loud, passionate communication was not just acceptable to them, it was necessary for building trust. Connection established, Patricia announced. We're linked directly to the lead Zephyrian vessel. Maya took a deep breath and sat down at the communication console. This was it. Everything she had worked for, everything she had sacrificed had led to this moment. She activated the recording system and began to speak. But instead of the quiet, measured tones that Curtis had been using, Maya spoke with the same passion and intensity that had gotten her fired. Her voice filled the small room as she addressed the Zephyrian fleet. Greetings, honored Zephyrians, Maya said, her voice strong and clear. I am Maya Johnson, speaking for the people of Earth. We have been trying to communicate with you, but we fear our messages have been misunderstood. We want you to know that we speak to you now with honest hearts and open minds. The response came almost immediately. The communication equipment crackled with harmonic patterns that were unlike anything Maya had heard before. The Zephyrians were not just talking back to her, they were singing. Their crystalline voices created complex musical patterns that resonated through the equipment. Maya's hands trembled as she worked to translate the harmonic patterns into human language. Her months of research paid off as she began to understand what the aliens were saying. They're asking why we were speaking so quietly before, Maya told Patricia excitedly. They thought we were dying or trying to deceive them. They're relieved to finally hear honest communication from humanity. For the next hour, Maya engaged in the most important conversation in human history. She explained that humans had different communication styles and that the previous quiet messages were not meant to be deceptive. The Zephyrians responded with complex harmonics that expressed understanding and curiosity about human culture. But their conversation was interrupted by the sound of vehicles outside the building. Patricia ran to the window and looked out at the parking lot. Security cars, she said grimly. Lots of them. And I think I see Curtis and Hart getting out of one of them. Maya's blood ran cold. Someone had discovered what they were doing and alerted the Institute. In minutes, Curtis would be in this room and he would shut down the communication link that Maya had worked so hard to establish. We need more time, Maya said desperately. The Zephyrians are just starting to trust us. If we cut off communication, now they might think we were deceiving them after all. Patricia was already working at another computer terminal. I'm sending out an emergency message to everyone I can think of. Other researchers, graduate students, anyone who might be able to help us. Maya continued talking to the Zephyrians, explaining that other humans were coming who might try to interrupt their conversation. She asked them to be patient and to remember that not all humans understood the proper way to communicate with crystalline beings. The Zephyrian response was both understanding and concerned. They warned Maya that if communication was cut off abruptly, it would confirm their suspicions that humanity was not ready for honest contact with other species. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the communication room. Curtis's voice could be heard giving orders to security personnel. They had found the underground entrance to the building. Maya Johnson, this is Director Curtis, came a voice over the building's intercom system. You are engaged in unauthorized contact with an alien species. Shut down that equipment immediately and surrender yourself to security. Maya looked at Patricia, who was still frantically sending messages to their contacts. Any luck? Dr. Kevin Brooks from the University Linguistics Department is on his way, Patricia said. And I think Professor Linda Chen from the Astronomy Department got my message too. But I don't know if they'll get here in time. The door to the communication room burst open, and Curtis strode in with 3 security guards. His face was red with anger, and Lisa Hart followed close behind him. Shut down that equipment now, Curtis demanded. You are committing treason by conducting unauthorized alien contact. Maya stood up from the communication console but did not move away from it. Director Curtis, the Zephyrians are finally responding positively to our communications. If you shut this down now, you'll undo everything we've accomplished. Everything you've accomplished? Hart said with disgust. You've violated every protocol we have for alien contact. You could have started a war. I prevented a war, Maya shot back, her voice rising with emotion. Your quiet, careful approach was making the Zephyrians think we were hostile or dying. They were preparing to leave or defend themselves because they thought we were deceiving them. Curtis gestured to the security guards. Remove her from that equipment. But before the guards could move, the door burst open again. Dr. Kevin Brooks rushed in, followed by Professor Linda Chen and several graduate students. Behind them came more faculty members and researchers that Patricia had contacted. Wait, Dr. Brooks said breathlessly. Don't shut down that communication link. If Maya has established successful contact with the aliens, we need to understand what she's done. Professor Chen moved to one of the computer screens, showing the Zephyrian communication patterns. These harmonic structures are incredible, she said in amazement. Maya, how did you figure out how to decode these? Maya glanced at Curtis, who was looking uncertain for the first time since he had entered the room. I spent 6 months studying their communication style after I was fired for being too loud, she said. It turns out that being loud is exactly what the Zephyrians respect in honest communication. The communication equipment crackled again with Zephyrian harmonics. Maya quickly moved back to the console to respond, despite the security guard standing nearby. The Zephyrians are asking what's happening, Maya announced to the room. They can sense that there's conflict among the humans. They want to know if the loud, honest communication they've been receiving is going to continue, or if we're going back to the quiet, deceptive style. Curtis stared at the communication equipment, then at Maya, then at the crowd of researchers who had gathered in the small room. For the first time in months, he seemed unsure of what to do. Director Curtis, Dr. Brooks said quietly, I think you need to let Maya continue this conversation. Humanity's future may depend on it. Maya looked at Curtis, waiting for his decision. The Zephyrians were still waiting for an answer, and every second of silence made them more suspicious that humanity was returning to its deceptive communication style. Finally, Curtis stepped back from the communication console. Continue, said reluctantly, but I want a full report on everything that's said. Maya smiled and turned back to the Zephyrian fleet. Her voice filled the room once again as she assured the aliens that humanity was committed to honest, passionate communication. The crisis had passed, but Maya knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger. The next 3 days at the underground communication station became a whirlwind of activity. Maya had established the first successful dialogue with the Zephyrian fleet, but Director Curtis was fighting her every step of the way. He insisted on monitoring every conversation and kept trying to insert his own diplomatic language into Maya's communications. Maya sat at the communication console, frustrated and exhausted. Curtis stood behind her with Lisa Hart, both of them reviewing transcripts of her conversations with the Zephyrians. This language is too informal, Curtis complained, pointing at Maya's latest message. We need to maintain proper diplomatic protocols when speaking with an alien species. The Zephyrians don't understand our diplomatic protocols, Maya replied tiredly. Every time you make me use formal language, they think I'm being dishonest with them. Their culture values emotional authenticity, not polite formality. Hart shook her head. Maya, you can't just talk to aliens like you're having a casual conversation. There are procedures for this kind of contact. Maya turned around in her chair to face them both. Your procedures almost caused an interstellar war. My approach is actually working. The Zephyrians have moved their ships out of defensive formation and are showing interest in establishing formal relations with Earth. Despite Maya's success, Curtis refused to give her full control over the communications. He had moved the entire operation back to the main institute and put Maya under constant supervision. She was allowed to continue talking to the Zephyrians, but only if she followed scripts that Curtis and Hart approved beforehand. The situation was getting worse by the day. Maya could sense the Zephyrians becoming frustrated with the mixed messages they were receiving. Sometimes Maya spoke to them with passion and honesty, but other times she was forced to use the quiet, formal language that Curtis insisted upon. The aliens were starting to think that humanity was unstable or confused. Patricia Wells found Maya in the institute cafeteria during a break between communication sessions. Maya was staring at her untouched sandwich, looking defeated. You can't give up now, Patricia said, sitting down across from Maya. You've come too far to let Curtis ruin everything. I don't know what else to do, Maya replied. Every time. I establish trust with the Zephyrians. Curtis makes me say something that confuses them. They're starting to think humans are either mentally unstable or deliberately trying to deceive them. Patricia leaned forward and lowered her voice. Maya, I've been monitoring the Zephyrian communications during your breaks. Their fleet has started powering up what our analysts think are weapon systems. Maya's head snapped up. What? They're not preparing to attack, Patricia said quickly. The weapons appear to be defensive, but Maya, I think they're getting ready to leave. If they decide that humanity is too unstable or deceptive to communicate with, they're going to abandon first contact and warn other alien species to stay away from Earth. Maya felt sick to her stomach. Humanity's first chance to join the galactic community was slipping away because Curtis was more concerned with following procedures than with actually communicating effectively. There's something else, Patricia continued. I intercepted some communications between Curtis and the government. They're planning to take full control of alien contact away from you. Tomorrow morning, they're bringing in a team of diplomats who have never even studied Zephyrian culture. Maya stared at Patricia in horror. They're going to destroy everything we've built. The Zephyrians will never trust humanity after that. Unless you do something tonight, Patricia said meaningfully. Maya understood what Patricia was suggesting. You want me to go behind Curtis's back again? I want you to save humanity's future, Patricia replied. Maya, you're the only person on Earth who truly understands how to communicate with the Zephyrians. If you don't act now, this opportunity will be lost forever. That night, Maya lay in her bed at the Institute dormitory staring at the ceiling. Curtis had insisted that she stay on site during the alien contact period, officially for security. Reasons but really to keep her under constant supervision. The hallways were patrolled by security guards and her room was monitored. But Maya had not survived 12 years in the competitive world of space communications without learning how to be resourceful. She had discovered that the Institute's security system had a blind spot near the loading dock, and she knew the schedules of all the night shift personnel. At 3 a.m, Maya slipped out of her room and made her way through the darkened corridors of the Institute. She avoided the main hallways and took service passages that most people didn't know existed. Her destination was the primary communication array on the roof of the building. Maya had helped design the security protocols for the communication system, and she knew how to bypass them. More importantly, she had access codes that Curtis had never thought to revoke after firing her. In his arrogance, he had assumed that Maya would never be allowed near the equipment again. The roof of the Institute was cold and windy. Maya shivered as she worked to activate the main communication array, her fingers flying across the control panel. Within minutes, she had established a direct link to the Zephyrian flagship. Maya took a deep breath and began speaking into the communication system. But this time she did not hold back. She spoke with all the passion and intensity that had gotten her fired in the first place. Her voice rang out across the night sky, carrying her message to the alien fleet orbiting Earth. Honored Zephyrians, Maya said, her voice strong and clear. This is Maya Johnson speaking directly to you without interference from others. I need you to understand that the confused messages you have been receiving do not represent the true nature of humanity. My own people have been trying to silence my voice because they fear honest communication. The response from the Zephyrians was immediate and powerful. Their harmonic patterns filled the communication array with sounds that were both beautiful and alien. Maya worked frantically to translate their message, and what she heard made her heart race. The Zephyrians were telling her that they had been waiting for humanity to speak with a single, honest voice. They had been confused by the mixed messages, but had hoped that eventually humans would overcome their fear of authentic communication. We have been studying your species, the lead Zephyrian communicated through complex harmonic patterns. We see that some of your people speak with honest voices while others speak with fear. We want to know which represents the true nature of humanity. Maya knew this was the most important moment in human history. Her next words would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community or was left alone in the universe. The true nature of humanity is found in those who speak with honest voices, Maya replied, her words carrying across space to the alien fleet. We are a young species, and some of us are still afraid to communicate with the passion and authenticity that you value. But we are learning. We want to be worthy of your friendship and trust. The Zephyrian response was unlike anything Maya had heard before. It was a harmonic pattern that seemed to contain joy, relief, and acceptance all at once. As Maya worked to understand the complex message, she realized that the aliens were inviting humanity to join a larger community of species that valued honest communication above all else. But her moment of triumph was shattered by the sound of footsteps on the roof behind her. Maya turned to see Curtis and Hart approaching with a team of security guards. Curtis's face was red with fury. "Maya Johnson, you are under arrest for violation of alien contact protocols," Curtis shouted. "Shut down that equipment immediately." Maya looked at the communication array, then at Curtis, then back at the equipment. The Zephyrians were still waiting for her response to their invitation. If she shut down the communication now, they might interpret it as rejection or deception. "I can't shut it down," Maya said firmly. "The Zephyrians are waiting for humanity's answer to their invitation to join the galactic community. If I cut off communication now, we might lose this chance forever." Curtis gestured to the security guards. "Remove her from that equipment by force if necessary." But as the guards moved toward Maya, the communication array suddenly filled with new voices. Other Zephyrian ships were joining the conversation, adding their harmonic patterns to the growing chorus. The sound was so loud and beautiful that everyone on the roof stopped to listen. Maya turned back to the communication system and spoke one final time. "Honored Zephyrians, humanity accepts your invitation. We are ready to learn how to communicate with honest voices and open hearts." The response from the alien fleet was immediate and overwhelming. Every ship in the Zephyrian fleet began broadcasting at once, creating a harmonic symphony that could be heard across the entire solar system. It was a song of welcome, acceptance, and hope for the future. Even Curtis and Hart stood transfixed by the alien music filling the night sky. For the first time since Maya had known them, they were speechless. Maya stepped back from the communication array and faced Curtis with a smile. "Director Curtis, I believe humanity just passed its first test." 3 months after that night on the Institute rooftop, Maya Johnson stood at the center of the most remarkable structure ever built on Earth. The Galactic Communications Arena rose around her like a giant bowl, its walls lined with speakers and harmonic resonators designed to carry voices across species barriers. The arena could hold representatives from dozens of different alien civilizations, each with their own unique way of communicating. Maya wore a simple blue dress and carried no notes or prepared speeches. After years of being told she was too loud, she had learned to trust her own voice completely. Around her, the arena buzzed with sounds and vibrations from 7 different alien species who had come to Earth for the first interstellar communication conference. The Zephyrians occupied the section closest to the center stage, their crystalline forms catching and reflecting the arena's lights like living prisms. Their leader, a being Maya had come to know as Harmony of Truth, pulsed with gentle blue light as it waited for the conference to begin. In the section to Maya's left sat the Ethereal Collective, gaseous beings who communicated through changes in density and chemical composition. Their section was filled with swirling clouds of different colors that shifted and moved as they talked among themselves. The Verdanian Consortium had claimed the section with the best natural lighting. These plant-like beings communicated through patterns of growth and the release of chemical signals. Their section looked like a garden, with vines and flowers that changed color and shape as the aliens expressed different thoughts and emotions. Other sections held beings that Maya was still learning to understand. The resonant minds communicated through electromagnetic pulses. The stone speakers used vibrations through solid matter. The light weavers painted patterns in the air with controlled beams of energy. Each species had brought their own translation equipment and communication specialists. In the back section of the arena, almost hidden in the shadows, sat the former leadership of the Terran Space Communications Institute. Director Curtis and Lisa Hart looked uncomfortable and out of place among the diverse gathering of alien beings. They had been invited to attend as a courtesy, but everyone knew they were no longer in charge of humanity's alien relations. Maya had been appointed as Earth's first interstellar communications ambassador, a position created specifically for her by the Joint Committee of World Governments. Patricia Wells had been named as her deputy, and together they had spent the past 3 months learning to communicate with each new species that arrived at Earth. The transformation had been remarkable. What started as contact with a single Zephyrian fleet had grown into a gathering of multiple civilizations, all drawn to Earth by news of humanity's breakthrough in cross-species communication. Maya had become the bridge between humanity and the galaxy, translating not just languages but entire ways of thinking and being. Friends and honored guests, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's advanced sound system. We gathered today to celebrate something that many thought was impossible. 7 different species, each with their own way of communicating, sitting together in peace and understanding. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Zephyrians created harmonic patterns that resonated through the arena's crystal structures. The ethereal collective swirled in complex formations that painted emotions in the air. The Verdanian Consortium released waves of sweet-smelling chemicals that conveyed approval and joy. Maya waited for the cacophony of alien voices to settle before continuing. 3 months ago, humanity nearly lost its chance to join this galactic community because some of us were afraid of honest communication. We thought that speaking with passion and intensity was unprofessional or dangerous. We almost chose silence over truth. She paused and looked toward the section where Curtis and Hart sat. They were staring at their hands, unable to meet her gaze. But we learned something important from our Zephyrian friends, Maya continued. We learned that authentic communication requires courage. It requires the willingness to speak with your true voice, even when others tell you that voice is too loud or too different. Harmony of truth pulsed with bright golden light and created a harmonic pattern that the translation system rendered as applause. The other alien species responded in their own ways, creating a symphony of approval that filled the arena. Maya smiled and raised her voice, letting it fill every corner of the massive structure. Today, we are not just different species sitting in the same room. We are the beginning of something new. We are the first members of what I hope will become a true galactic community, built on the foundation of honest communication and mutual respect. The resonant mind sent out electromagnetic pulses that created patterns of light on the arena's displays. The stone speakers vibrated the floor beneath everyone's feet in complex rhythms. The light weavers painted brilliant designs in the air above the arena. Maya had learned to read these different forms of communication over the past 3 months. Each species was expressing the same basic message in their own way: agreement, excitement, and hope for the future. I want to tell you about the journey that brought us here, Maya said, her voice strong and clear. It began with a simple misunderstanding. Humanity tried to communicate with our Zephyrian friends using quiet, careful language that we thought was polite and diplomatic. But the Zephyrians interpreted our quiet voices as signs of deception or illness. Harmony of truth created a low, rumbling harmonic that the translation system identified as laughter. Other Zephyrians joined in, creating a musical pattern that somehow conveyed both amusement and embarrassment at the memory. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to communicate the way others expected me to, and started communicating the way that felt natural and honest to me, Maya continued. I had been fired from my job for being too loud and argumentative, but it turned out that being loud and passionate was exactly what our alien friends were hoping to hear from humanity. Maya looked around the arena at all the different species represented there. Each of you has taught us something important about communication. The Ethereal Collective showed us that emotions can be expressed through movement and change. The Verdanian Consortium taught us that growth and transformation can be forms of language. The Resonant Minds demonstrated that thoughts can be shared directly through electromagnetic patterns. She paused and took a deep breath. But most importantly, all of you have shown humanity that there is no single right way to communicate. The key is authenticity. The key is having the courage to use your true voice, whatever that voice might sound like. The arena erupted in responses from all 7 species at once. The Zephyrians sang in harmonies that made the crystal structures ring like bells. The Ethereal Collective created swirling patterns that painted the air with colors that had no names. in human language. The Verdanian Consortium released waves of chemical signals that smelled like spring rain and growing flowers. Maya felt tears running down her cheeks as she looked around at the incredible gathering. Just 3 months ago, she had been sitting alone in her apartment, fired and forgotten, believing that her voice would never be heard again. Now her voice was at the center of the most important conversation in human history. "I was once told that I was too loud for polite society," Maya said, her voice rising with emotion. "I was fired for being argumentative and disruptive. I was silenced because people were uncomfortable with my passion and intensity." She gestured toward the assembled alien representatives. "But standing here today, surrounded by friends from across the galaxy, I want to say something to anyone who has ever been told their voice is too loud, too different, or too much." Maya's voice filled the arena, carrying to every section and every species represented there. "Your voice matters. Your authenticity matters. The very qualities that make others uncomfortable might be exactly what the universe needs to hear." Harmony of Truth rose from its position in the Zephyrian section and created a harmonic pattern that needed no translation. It was a sound of pure approval and respect, joined immediately by harmonics from every other Zephyrian in the arena. The other species responded in their own ways, creating a symphony of support that filled the arena with light, sound, chemical signals, electromagnetic pulses and vibrations. It was the sound of 7 different civilizations saying the same thing. Maya Johnson's voice was exactly as loud as it needed to be. Maya smiled through her tears and spoke her final words to the Galactic Assembly. "Thank you for teaching humanity that sometimes the loudest voices carry the most important messages. Thank you for showing us that authentic communication is worth any risk. And thank you for proving that when we speak with our true voices, the whole universe can hear us." The response from the arena was unlike anything ever heard on Earth before. 7 species, each with their own way of communicating, joined together in a celebration of authentic expression that could be felt across the solar system. Maya Johnson, the woman who had once been fired for being too loud, stood at the center of it all, her voice finally filling the space it was always meant to occupy.